there. All right, nice. Now, okay. All right, so now I'll hit create project and chug. The Unity editor will start in a second. So it'll just create all the base files, and here comes Unity. Yes, that'll take a little bit. All right. Yeah, it'll be busy for about half a minute, so we can chill. Yes.
Is it written in Java?
No, it's not. This
Or C#, is it?
actually, this bit might be written in. I don't know what Unity Hub's built in. The editor is a combination of C++ and .NET.
Oh, okay.
So it's possible they wrote the Unity Hub in .NET. Yeah, I'm not sure about the Unity Hub. That's actually an interesting question. Could be anything.
Yeah.
But the Unity editor is extensible as well. So just like how you can write your own components and then add them into objects in the scene, like as part of your game, you can actually write components for the editor.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
In the editor, obviously.
Yeah, for the editor itself. And in fact, we'll see that here. So see over on the right side here, they've got this nice kind of README thing, they call it, Universal Render Pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see that on the right?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that thing there is this thing on the left. Now, I don't know if I can really zoom in on this. That's an interesting question. Can you see what I've got highlighted?
Yeah, README.
README, awesome. Ace, you can read it. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Now, how well that'll translate in the overall video, I don't know. What I might do, actually, let me do this. So I have a bit of a worry. Hey, come here. My screen's bigger than the video will probably capture. So there we go. So README there. So that README is actually, okay, so that's an asset, but there's code behind that. So in there, where are we? Oh, they'll be hiding here somewhere. Tutorial info, I think it's here. Scripts, yeah, the README, this one. So if I double click on this, okay, so I've got mine configured for Visual Studio 2022.
Mm-hmm.
Let me bring that in a bit. So yeah, so here they've got this README. So README code, this code here is actually something that works, you know, inside the editor in certain ways. There are different ways of writing components and have that work inside the editor itself, which is kind of cool. Anyway, so having created this, we don't need their. So they have a scene. So let's do this sort of guided tour of what's here,
Mm-hmm.
and then we can actually delete the stuff we don't need and make our own. You know, a bit later on we'll make our own scene. So, all right. So what do we have? So first of all, we have a scene window up the top. So up the top, I have my scene window. So you can change your layout as you see fit. And so these are tabs. So I can actually drag this around and put it wherever I want it. So the scene window is where you basically design your scene and put objects in the scene and move them around. And I can scroll the mouse and zoom in and zoom out.
Oh, yeah.
And if I right click, I can sort of pan the sort of virtual camera, the scene camera around. I can pan as well by middle, so I can middle click like on the scroll wheel. I can middle click and see how the mouse cursor turns into a hand.
Oh, yeah.
So then I can pan left and right or up, down, whatever. And then if I left click, I'm clicking on objects. And you'll see a few things. So over on the left hand side we have the hierarchy window.
Yep.
So in the hierarchy window, these are all the objects in the scene, and so when I click on an object, I'm a different object in the hierarchy will get selected. So here I've got the workshop set. Okay, so that's the whole set. There's all those objects, and I can click instead on the hierarchy on the left. Let's have a look. Right. Actually, there's not that many separate objects. But I can click on something there, and then that's selected in the scene view, so in the scene window. So you can see here there's these axes, the green vertical axis, the red horizontal, and blue horizontal.
Mm-hmm.
And then over here on the right we can see there's X, Z and Y, so Y being up. So I can actually grab that Y axis and move those objects up and down. Or I can grab the blue one and move it along the Z axis. Or I can click and drag on the X axis.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we'll do a bit more of that when we create a project. But just to show you, that's what that means. And so they call that gizmos. So you can see in the scene tab, we have this thing called gizmos, and you can actually turn gizmos on and off. And so actually the gizmos are like this camera thing, and there's some reflection probes. So the cameras.
There's a lot of stuff there.
Yeah, there's a bit of noise, a few things to understand. So see how I've got this other window below? We've got the game window.
Mm-hmm.
So the game window is what you can see through the camera. So if I move the camera around, and you can see the camera, there's a little camera view thing in the bottom right of the scene window as well. So if I rotate the camera, or move the camera, actually I'll just move the camera, you can see that view changes both in the game window and in that little main camera view. Okay, and then now the thing is I can move this game window, this tab up here, and there's a different layout. So then I can choose between the scene view, which makes it easier to edit the scene, and then if I hit play, it'll automatically bring me to the game view. If that makes sense.
Say that again.
So okay, that's fair. Let's do that again. So the scene view is where you edit your scene and you lay things out. And then if you want to actually, so if I hit play, so up here we've got play, pause. So if I hit play, it'll actually compile any code that hasn't been compiled, and now it's running the game.
Oh, yep.
And so you can actually kind of run your game without having to build it, which is a cool thing. And so now you can see what it looks like. This is what the camera can see.
Yeah.
And I can hit play again, which stops it. And so that's how you can get a sense. And so when I hit play, it took me across to that game view, and I have maximize on play turned on, which is why it sort of took up the whole screen. So if I hit play now, because I've just turned that off, now we can see what's in the game view, and I can actually swing across to the scene view while it's running, and I could move the camera around. Hang on. Okay, I should be able to move the camera around. Okay, that's interesting. It's not going to let me move the camera around. Well, that's always fun. For some reason it's not letting me. Actually, I can do it another way. What happens if I do that? Okay. Oh, the camera's locked in place by something. There's probably some code. Okay. Okay, the camera's locked in place. There's some code locking it in place. Yeah, so anyway, so it's possible to kind of get two views, you know, the current scene, how I'm editing it, and, you know, how it's actually playing.
Yeah.
So those are those two windows. They're obviously pretty important. We have, over on the right, we have the inspector. So, for instance, if I click on, okay, the workshop set, that's just like these walls and the floor and all that. So here it's got the name of the object. We have the position. So this is a component called the transform component. And if I change the values here, that just moved it in the x-axis. I could move it up and down by editing the y value, which would actually be the same as if I drag on the axes in the scene view. So you can see now it's changing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So you kind of get this dual way, you know, you've got the inspector where you can do things really precisely, and then if you just want to quickly edit things, you can do that in the scene view. So you kind of got two ways. Now for your project, we have the project window, which I have at the bottom at the moment. And so the project window as a base folder has a directory called assets. And assets is where all the files that make up your project. So this will be your code, any images you create that you might use in the scene. You can actually make your own user interfaces, like with buttons and things like that. So like for menus and things. And so, those things would go here as well. If you create materials, or if you go and get some 3D assets, or if you make a 3D asset in, say, Blender or something, you can import them, and so you can actually have a place for models, and then you can make your own materials, and you can use them in your scene.
Yeah. So what's a material compared to an asset?
Okay, so material is one type of asset.
Oh, okay.
So assets are literally everything you need, all the different parts of your game or your program. So materials are literally the look and feel. So if we find, so here we've got skybox material, which is literally controlling what the sky looks like. And you can see in the inspector, I've got some properties I can change through the inspector. So for the sun, I can change the size of the sun, which if I could see this, we can see the sun changing. Different materials for different objects. It'll be easier when we create our own, like we'll make our own stuff, our own scene shortly, and then we can see more. So here we have the sample scene, which will actually be this one. So up in right at the top of Unity, the Unity editor, you'll see we've got sample scene. So overview being the project name dash sample scene, the name of the scene we have open, because you can actually you can have multiple scene files. So just like in a game, how you might have different levels, you can actually switch from one scene to the next scene. So a scene is literally like a whole level. And then let's see, there's a few other tabs I have open here. Like I've got project settings, which I've just leave that open and leave it and have it up there as my general layout. And there's package manager. We'll talk about packages actually a bit later. And then there's the console, where you can actually print like debug messages outside the console, which is good for obviously when you're coding. Okay, how's that so far?
That's good. So can we go back to the material? I want to ask a question. The properties you showed me, they're specific to that specific material. If I was to create another material, it would have potentially different properties?
Yes, exactly right.
Oh, that's cool.
So here we have, up in the inspector, you can see there's shader.
Yeah.
And then it's got skybox procedural. So procedural meaning there's different ways you can have a skybox. You can have a 6-sided cube, and you can put 6 textures, textures meaning images. You can configure a different kind of skybox. If I click on this, I get to choose the shader I want to have. So if I go skybox, here we've got procedural, panoramic, there's the 6-sided cube, and there's a cube map, which I can't remember what the difference is, but if I go to 6-sided for a second, or in fact, I'll just create a new material so I don't mess that one up. So if I right click in the project window, then I can hit create, and then from here we can create a whole bunch of things. Like we can create a source file, for C#. We can create a shader if we want, which is, there's a whole lot of that gets more advanced. We can create some test code. We can create a material here. So diff skybox. And then now it's a sort of a standard material for an object, but I can change the shader, and as I do that, we'll get different properties. So if I go to skybox 6-sided, now we get to see the properties have changed, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4. Scroll down. There's one up the top. If I make this, you can change the size of the windows or panels. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 being the images that I can choose for my skybox, and it means that as a player, if I move the player around, they're literally going to see, those different images. So you can actually design those images so that they sort of stitch together.
Yeah.
And then it looks like that far background. Yeah, and you can do a few different things here. So, and then I can click back on it later on. So as I click on them, they sort of save automatically as you make changes to the properties. They basically save.
Okay.
Yeah, and Unity uses YAML as its serialization for all these sorts of things. So you can obviously use Git as a. They actually have a few different ways of doing version control, and Git's okay if you've got a heavily code-oriented project. It gets a bit heavy with images. If you've got massive images and 3D models, then Git gets a little less good.
Yeah.
Let's see. And there's a few different types of things we can create in a project in terms of different kinds of assets like images and such.